Hi, this is Cheryl McQueen, designer with Bello's Designs. Welcome to Christmas in July. Only 6 months to go before Christmas. This video will show you how you can create a border using a square stencil. It features a lovely Nellie's Choice winter scene as well. So let's take a look at the supplies that we're going to use today to make this really lovely Christmas card. The cardstock that I will be using is the Lavinia Multifarious Smooth and Supreme. I have cut it to 3.5 inches by 4 inches. Usually I will use like the 7 by 7 size, but whatever works for you to cut down to the size that you need for your card. We will then do a border that we will use around the edge behind our art. I have cut a white piece of cardstock to be 3 3/4 by 5 inches, and then also show you how we're going to go ahead and get some color on this to match our card. For our card base, I've just taken an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock. I cut that in half and then folded one of those halves into half to create my card base. To create our border at the top, we're actually going to use the Sweet Poppy Snowflake Square Stencil Aperture, and this is what that looks like. But what we want to do is just create a border, so I will show you how we can use this particular stencil to create that lovely border. For our design today, we're going to use a Nellie's Choice stamp. This one is called Christmas Time Snowy House. The number on it is CT014. For our black ink, we will just be using the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And then for our border colors, we're going to use 2 of the Distress inks. The first one will be Stormy Sky, and the second will be Chipped Sapphire. For the coloring, you can choose whatever you would like to use. I love the Tim Holtz watercolor pencils, so that's what I'll be using today, but feel free to use art markers or other color pencils or whatever you have around that you like to color with. So the colors of the watercolor pencils are going to be Rustic Wilderness, Candied Apple, Mustard Seed, Vintage Photo, and Walnut Stain. For doing my stamping, I like to use a platform. So the platform, that's just a nice stamping platform. I always like to put a sticky grid down, that way I don't have to mess with any magnets. Makes it a little easier for me. Then we will be using a couple of blending tools. I've just got some blending brushes here. And we will be using some paint brushes. I usually have a couple of sizes on hand just because I can then do bigger areas with the larger one and then the more fine detailed ones with a very tiny one. For putting our project together, I like to use just an adhesive tape. It goes pretty quickly when I'm trying to do a demonstration, but you can also use a paper craft glue. One that they carry on Bello's is the Ultra Adhesive Bond. This glue has a very fine tip on the end of the bottle, so if you need to do a very small area, then you can do that. We will also go ahead and use the Sweet Poppy Low Tack Tape. I will show you how to use this. This is a great masking off tape for you to use. And then one of the things that I like to use, which is optional, it's up to you, but one of these magnet sheets so that when you place your metal stencil on top of your paper, this helps to keep it from shifting around. So let's get started working on our Christmas in July card. To begin our project, we're going to take our art card. I'm going to push this aside for now, and we're going to do the stenciling for our border first. So we'll be doing the top and the bottom of our border. Now what I like to do is use the magnet. So I'm going to lay my cardstock down on top of the magnet. And then I'm going to take my stencil. Now what I want to do is I want the top edge of my card to be at the top edge of my stencil. So we're going to take this, and I apologize if my head ends up getting in the way here as I try and line this up. So we're going to take our card and just put the edge right at the top of the area where our snowflakes are. And once you get that positioned, this is where I use the low-tack tape. I'm going to mask off because I am kind of messy sometimes and go across the edges. So I'm going to actually mask off below that area of the bottom of the snowflake stencil. I'm probably just going to go ahead and do 2 pieces just because I know I won't come down that low, but better safe than sorry. And then I'm going to go ahead and put a piece at the top, and that's more for stabilization than it really is for worrying about masking anything off. But I just like to make sure that my stencil is not going to wiggle. And when you put down this to mask off, this should also keep your art card from wiggling. So what we're now going to do is we're going to take our Stormy Sky. Start out with that. So take your Stormy Sky and just blend it completely over the entire area. I like to go ahead and get it just a little bit darker for this particular project. So I will go over the areas a couple of times probably just to add a little bit more ink and give that a nice good coating. Alright, so when you have it as dark as you would like it to be, then we're going to move on to the chipped sapphire. So we'll set that aside and get out chipped sapphire. With the chipped sapphire, I just want to put it at the very top edge. So it'll kind of look like a blending of darker down to lighter. And I'll probably end up going about halfway down on the border strip there. And as you get too close to your edge where you're wanting it to blend a little bit, you can go a little bit lighter and keep your darkest place at the very top. But it's however you like. This is how I like to do it, so that it just kind of blends down. Alright, and so that is all you have to do for the top part of your border. And then what we're going to do is just repeat that for the bottom part of our border. So you can now peel that off. And you can see our nice lovely border there. So now, so that I can see it a little bit better, I'm going to go ahead and remove this. And then I'll put it back on. So now I'm going to take my card and once again just line up the top of the card with the top of the snowflake area. Take my low-tack tape and put it back down for my masking. And I'm going to repeat the same process. Okay, so now we can go ahead and remove our stencil and our tape. And now we've got this really lovely border for our card. So I'm going to set aside my magnet piece, which I don't need to use anymore, and our stencil, and we are ready to begin the process of putting our stamp and getting the color on it. So I'm going to grab my stamping platform, and I'm going to place my card down on the stamping platform. And then we're going to take our our Nellie's Choice Snowy House winter scene here, Christmas scene. And we're just going to center that into the white area between our borders. All right. And now we're ready to ink up the stamp with our Nocturne. One of the reasons that I really love the stamping platform is that if you don't get it to look exactly the way you want it to the first time, I like my impressions to be really dark, so that you can obviously go back, add a little more ink, and be able to stamp in the same place. Apply pressure across the entire stamp to make sure we get it touching all surfaces of the card. Yeah, that's just a little light for me, so I'm going to go ahead and add just one more layer of the black ink. It's quite possible that I'm getting low on this particular ink pad, so I use this all the time. But that's okay, we just apply it a second time. Works just as well. There we go. I think that's much better. All right. That's all the stamping that we need to do, so we can go ahead and remove our card from the stamping platform. Set that aside. And so now we are ready to go ahead and begin the process of adding our color. Now for my sky on my example here, I've actually gone ahead and used the Stormy Sky Distress ink. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put a little bit, and I'll kind of scooch this over a little bit so you can see it. I'm going to put just a little bit of the ink from the ink pad over onto my work surface. And I'm going to spritz a little water down here. And then I'm going to get one of my paint brushes. And what I'm going to do is just get my paintbrush wet, dip it into the ink. And then I'm just going to do strokes. Just kind of in the back sky background. And if you want it a little bit lighter, then you don't add as much ink, just add a little bit. And so just gently put some of those blue strokes across the sky. Kind of gives you a little bit of a winter sky feeling. You actually want the stroke marks to show up. You should remember to kind of go over on the sides too. See if you can kind of see that. It's a little bit light, but that just kind of gives it a nice winter sky feeling. Put a little bit more over on this side. Okay, so now we are ready to go ahead and begin coloring, or painting as I do, the house. So the first thing that I like to do is clean up my area just in case I need to use that again. I don't want to have ink there that I don't want to blend with others, or stick my elbow in it, because that's what I'm famous for, is doing that kind of thing. And then I'm also going to wet this brush, because I'm going to use it several times with several different colors, and just try and wipe off the blue. You can also take it to the sink, obviously, and rinse it off. Alright, so let's go ahead and start with the green in our tree. Again, I'm just going to be using the Tim Holtz watercolor pencils. I'm going to put a little bit of water down here on my work surface so that I can wet my brush when I need to. Then I'm just going to pick up the color on the pencil, and then on this particular stamp you can see the dark areas. That's where the snow is not on the tree. So we're just going to go in to those areas and add our colors. I think I'm going to grab a little bit finer point brush, since some of those areas are really tiny. So as you can see, I'm leaving the white area for the snow untouched, and then I'm just going in and painting those darker areas with the green, and I'll do that on both trees. So now that we've got our green in there, I'm going to go ahead and put the yellow in the window, so it looks like we've got a nice warm light on our cold winter's Christmas day. So we're just going to go into those little windows, add a little bit of the mustard yellow. And now, because I like to add just a little bit more color, I am going to take the candied apple, and then we're going to make our front door be red. So wipe up my water, get some fresh for the red. And then just paint our little doorway here. And this family liked red so much they decided they were going to paint their stoop red as well. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little red for where the steps are. All right. And so now we are ready to go ahead and do our house. So I'm going to rinse off my brush real quick. Get the red color out of it. And we're going to move on to our vintage photo first. This will kind of be our base color for the house, and then we'll go back in with the walnut stain to add a little bit of shadowing to it. So basically just go in with a light little coat on all the areas of the house. Alright, and so while I was at it, I just went ahead and used the same color to just kind of do a few little highlights, some shadows around the walkway and the fence there. Now we're going to take the darker color, which is our walnut stain, and go ahead and fill in on shadows. Again, what's helpful with most stamps is that they have the little black lines that kind of indicate where shadows go, so you can kind of get an idea of where to add the darker color to create your shadows. And the nice thing about going back in and adding the darker color is that it just makes it a little bit less flat. It gives you a little bit of dimension to your card. I also like to go ahead and just use the darker one on like the slats on this little balcony. so that they show up a little bit better, and on the little slats there, and then just add maybe just a little dash or two, a little bit along the fence line. And then we've got some deep shadows up here, kind of under the tree. Some right up here on the eave, so don't forget those. And you can even just dash a few around those dots, just to give the indication that it's not flat. And there you have it. That is all there is to doing this lovely project. It doesn't take very long. You get a very interesting border look, and then you get the reality of the winter cottage. So now we are ready to go ahead and mount our piece. Now, one of the things that I had told you a few minutes ago was about the border. So you notice that I had a white piece for the border. Now, I don't know if you're like me, I have probably 50 different shades of cardstock colors. And of course, I could not find the shade that I wanted. It would either be too dark or too light. So here's a quick, simple solution for you to be able to do if you can't find a frame the right color for your frame, the right color of cardstock. So I'm just going to take my Stormy Sky and my blending brush, and you don't have to do the whole card because obviously it's just the edges that's going to show for your border. But just take your blending brush and go around the four edges of your white piece of cardstock that you have for your border. And now you've got matching colors. Alright, so now you've just got a little bit of that color all around the edges. And now I'm just going to mount that on top. And I now have a border the color that I want without having to worry about whether or not I can find a piece of cardstock that's going to match. So now I'm just going to take my running tape and mount my card. Again, I hope my head doesn't get in the way here. It probably will while I'm trying to get this lined up straight. Oops. Try again. All right, and now we are ready to go ahead and mount it on our piece of cardstock. All right, same process. And we take that and center it in our card background base. And there we go. There is our Christmas in July card. And again, this one is a nice, quick, easy one, and yet the border gives you a really fantastic look without having to use the stencil for making a square. So you can use this also for making your beautiful card, but if you don't want to have a square but you want the border, you can still use the same stencil. Thank you so much for watching my video tutorial today. I hope you enjoy getting a start on your Christmas cards. Remember to check out the DelBellosDesigns.com website for more tutorials on the design team page. Have a great day!